What's her name?
Carrie.
What?
Hello. Welcome to Zibby's Bookshop. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Very excited to celebrate the new launch of Jayne Allen's new book. Congratulations. She is here tonight in conversation with Trisha Thomas. So I'll do a quick intro for both of them. It'll be about a 30-minute conversation between the two. We can open up to a Q&A, and then we can sign and buy lots of books. So Jayne is a writer, producer, and entrepreneur. In the earliest years of her career as an alumna of Harvard Law School and Duke University Pratt School of Engineering. She worked as an entertainment attorney, including in service to the late artist Prince, which we'll need to talk about later. Purposeful in centering and celebrating Black women's societal contributions, Allen's writing crafts transcultural stories to explore contemporary issues such as modern relationships, workplace and career dynamics, and the complexities of race. Allen currently serves on the diversity committee of the Authors Guild Council, a proud native of Detroit. She lives in Los Angeles, California. And Trisha Thomas is the author of the popular Napoli series. Her debut novel, Napoli Ever After, was a finalist for the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work, chosen for Oprah Magazine as a book that made a difference, and became a Netflix major motion picture starring Pastana Lappin. She's a Literary Lion Award honoree by the King County Library Foundation. She has written 14 novels and was featured in O Magazine, Glamour, Seattle Times, Essence Magazine, and Mary Sue. Her newest book is the historical novel, The Secret Keeper of Main Street.
Thank you.
Enjoy, everyone, and take away.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am Trisha Thomas, and I'm here to moderate and ask Jayne very hard questions, so you don't have to. No. But I just wanted to add, he read her bio, but I had made my own bio, and so I only added a couple of things, and one of them being her debut. Oh, not her debut novel, but her debut on national television on Good Morning America. And I sat there and watched that interview just like, that's Jayne. But I was just so excited, and she did so amazing and so well. And that was just like, it's just anyway, that was just like, but anyway, I also wanted to point out that her books, because I've read them all, are so rich and diverse. And okay, that's one of my. Let me just get to it. How do you find the courage to write the stories that you write? Where do you get the moxie? I want to say the word to have the courage to tell your stories.
Well, thank you. First of all, for being here, and in part, your presence here is part of that answer, because you're one of the people that inspired me to even think that I could write. No, but you need to know that representation is important, and your books and the representation in them was one of the permission spaces for me to even envision that I could do this and do this representation, and it's not easy.
Yes.
And I do remember at the time that I started in 2016 with Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, which was my first novel series, and thinking I wanted to have a Black woman as a protagonist in a different way, where, she had an interior life that was on the page and was the centerpiece of what was represented on the page. There wasn't a lot of that. And to think, okay, here are some stories that I can think of. This is possible. I'm going to just move forward anyway. I know there's an appetite for it because I'm telling a human story. And this is a perspective on humanity that is less common, that we don't see and that we need to learn from. Everybody's identity is partially how society treats you, and how society treats you is who you wind up becoming in part, and how you learn to cope with that, how you live your life, how you find your joy, how you heal, how you find your wholeness. Those are all instructions on living that people can benefit from. So that was where I started. I said, this woman has a story to tell. This woman is a teacher. she's going to teach, and so as I progressed into The Most Wonderful Time, this is a rom-com. It's a holiday story, and it's not. It's more than a holiday story, but it takes place over the holidays. But it's bigger than that, and fundamentally, it's a story about healing. That's the story. I mean, the Black Girls trilogy was a story about authenticity, and it took multiple books to get to that place. But this book is fundamentally a story about human healing. How do you heal? And there's characters in the book, different perspectives and angles on that journey that are giving instruction that when you're entertained by the story, but they're teachers. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing.
That's exactly how I feel when I'm reading. We made that word self-care.
Yeah.
And that's what your stories are like. They're self-care in fiction.
Thank you.
And
that's
so
what I wanted to
that is exactly what they're like. I specifically do want to hear about Prince.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like no one knows these things. So I want to know what that was like.
Yeah.
And well, first I'll preface it by saying, do you remember when Halle Berry optioned Napoli Ever After? I don't know if you remember, but everywhere I went, it's like, have you met Halle Berry? I'll be like, no. I have absolutely not met her. It's only me showing up. Like, well, are you sure? Can she come?
Right.
No, she will not be showing up. So I apologize for asking.
No. It's a good question.
But just tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, working for Prince 10 years prior, and this is the power of, I guess, the mind and sort of imagination. When I was working at Universal Music Group, and I was an executive, and I was in Santa Monica, in my office, not far from here, looking out, and my office overlooked the Ralph's parking lot. Mm-hmm. And I was always just like, I don't know if you ever saw that ad where someone was like, open. And I was like at the window, like, get me out of here. I was like, I'm in a prison, but I would like spend a lot of my time imagining what my life would be like on the other side of the window. I always remember that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, the one mind I want to know is Prince's mind. Like he had like released his album in the newspaper. And so I was like, oh, this I need to know this mind. And it wasn't something that I thought was even possible. I was like, if I could just know anybody or any person, how they think. And then fast forward 10 years later, and I won't get into that whole story, but the opportunity presented itself to work for him. And it was through a personal relationship. And, it was like, they're like, oh, can you send us your resume? I was like, I don't have a resume. I have a website. And they're like, well, whatever, just send us that. And I was like, I just remember like, I was in Bali and I was like, Prince is looking at my website right now. And so he wound up hiring me, and it was an incredible experience. And I spent a couple of weeks, like, I was like, okay, well, when are we going to talk? Like we have, and they were like, oh, blah, blah. Anyway, the craziest moment of my life was finally, they're like, okay, well, he's going to be at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And they were like, you'll call him. He had like this secret name or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna call the room, and I called him, I'm like, hello. So my name is Janique Seeley. My pen name is Jayne Allen. So professionally, I use Janique Seeley. And so I called him, and I was like, Prince, this is Janique. I was like, these are the craziest words I'll ever utter in my life. And then he was like, we talked. And I was like, we talked for an hour. So I worked with him for almost a year. And we spent a lot of time together. And at that time, I did not know that I was going to write books and I was going to be an author. And I didn't know, even when I became an author, that I would become an artist, which is very different. Mm-hmm. And what he was talking to me about, because I was like, I was working with him in the capacity of an attorney, but he would talk to me in the capacity of an artist. And we would have these battles where he was like, you can't be afraid. Jump, I've got you. Don't limit your mind. What are you doing? You're like, you need to do this. You've never done this before. You're going to do it. What? I want you to manage these artists. I'm like, wait, hold on. This is crazy. I remember one time I flew with him and we went to New York, and we came back. We flew back into Minneapolis on a private plane. It was just that was crazy. But we flew back. We landed in Minneapolis, and it's like 11 o'clock at night, close to midnight. And he's like, "Yeah, we were about to go to Chicago and do the Welcome to Chicago tours and shows." And he was like, "I really would like to just have the band play out one time before we go to Chicago." Well, we were leaving for Chicago at like 8 o'clock in the morning the next day. I was like, "Yeah, that would be really nice if we could." And he just like put his glasses on in the back of the Suburban like this and just sat there. And I was like, "Oh, I said something wrong." So I was like, "I don't know. I'm like, how are we going to play out? It's 11 o'clock at night. Well, we're coming from the airport." So we get to Paisley, the band is like packing up, and I'm like, "Yeah, we can roll a bit." Then the girls are like in the bathroom putting on makeup. And I'm like, "What is going on?" And they were like, so his manager's like, "Come ride with me. We're going." So we're on the freeway. I don't know, we're riding out, we're downtown. Next thing I know, we pull up at First Avenue. Next thing I know, I'm in First Avenue. Next thing I know, I'm in a two-top. Prince is sitting right next to me. He's like, "So what do you think?" I was like, "Oh, we doing that. Okay. This is what this is." So it was like, don't limit it's not, everything is possible. If you say something, that's the only thing that was an issue. If you said it's not possible. He's like, "Okay." And I guess those stories about him saying if he wants a giraffe to show up in the hotel lobby at 3 o'clock in the morning, a giraffe better show up in the hotel. That was how he was. So he definitely talked to me. He talked to the me that I would become. And I don't know how he knew that. I didn't know that about myself, but I have been prepared by him for what I am today.
Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see. We needed to hear that. I mean, the possibilities. That's one of the things I've always tried to instill in. My kids are 30 something, but I've just always tried to instill in them. Don't limit yourself. You don't even know what is in store, and so that's a beautiful story. Okay, now let's get to the nitty gritty.
Okay.
The most wonderful time. I did read it. I had the pleasure. I was just telling her a lot of spice in there. I didn't see coming.
Yeah.
But this is the first time I've read a book where I really just loved there was no bad characters.
Mm-hmm.
I even loved Joan.
I knew who you were going to say. I know, you can't not love her.
I mean, there was just no bad characters, and that's just so hard to do. Mm-hmm. And I just so anyway. It's a skill. It really is. I know you're an artist, but that is a skill to make your characters that likable in every plane. So I want you to just tell everyone, tell us just really what the story's about. I mean, you don't have to give the whole thing, but just quickly.
The story is about finding perspective through changing. There's a saying that change is as good as rest. And so the story is about two women. There's a Black woman in the south side of Chicago, Ramona Tucker, who is pretending to still be engaged because she doesn't want to disappoint her family by saying that, she's broken up with her fiance. So she thinks with a little bit more time, she'll be able to bring the relationship back together. And the only hiccup to this is that her mother has an over-the-top Christmas Eve party every year. And if she shows up without her fiance, everybody's going to know her secret. And so rather than ruin everybody's Christmas, she decides she needs to escape. And so it just so happens there's another woman in Malibu, California. Her name is Chelsea Flint. She is white. Her parents are from Europe, from Scotland. And she is an artist, but has lost her inspiration and all of her money. And so she cannot, her parents unfortunately passed away years prior. She's been mired in grief, and she can't afford the house that she inherited from them, which is right on the beach in Malibu. So in order to pay the taxes and not lose her place, she puts it up for rental over the holiday period to try to make some really quick money, which is perfect for Ramona. So they wind up swapping places. Chelsea, for her part, because she can't afford to go anywhere else, she goes to Ramona's house. Ramona goes to Chelsea's house to escape the holidays. One thing to know about Malibu is it's a small place, 10,500 residents. I did a lot of research about all of this, and I learned a lot of things I didn't realize. And Malibu is a very insular place. And when Ramona gets there, it really becomes a question of, and a story about belonging, who belongs where and what belongs to whom. And she has the patrol called on her by a seemingly well-meaning neighbor, who then spends the rest of Ramona's trip trying to A, hide what she did, and B, prove that she's not what it seems. So that is a secondary part of the story, the storyline. And of course, there's romance, and both women meet people who they need to meet for their personal journeys. So that's kind of there's a little bite of satire. This neighbor is Joan, who I call it a soft villain. She's not a villain,
No.
and you can't not love her. She's a very
Well-meaning.
challenging character to grapple with. And I can't wait for you to meet her, and I can't wait for you to meet Ramona, and I can't wait for you to meet Chelsea and Jay and Melva and everybody. There's a whole, when you open the book, there's just all these people in there, and they're just going to become a part of your life. So I'm excited for that for everybody here.
And so I want to know where you got the nerve to surf.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You had to do the research to know.
Yeah.
I loved the parts in the story when she was Ramona was surfing. I mean, I could feel that.
Thank you.
I knew you, like, I'm surfing, I'm writing, I'm surfing, I'm writing. So I could
know what it took to do. Well, I first wrote the surfing scene. So Malibu has one of the best surfing beaches on earth. And so when I was sending a character to Malibu, it seemed obvious, if she's able-bodied, to put her on a surfboard. Like, that's what you go and you do on vacation if you're going to be in Malibu. It's one of the things to do. Although I sent Ramona Tucker to Malibu, and Ramona Tucker's a Black woman. So I'm just going to, by a show of hands, if I say, think of a surfer, do you think of a Black woman first thought? Anybody? No, right? And so as a writer, my job is to interrogate that. Like, that's just something I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. This is not, the representation is not there. This is not an obvious thing. And I'm doing something atypical by putting this woman on a surfboard. So then my job is, I feel like, to interrogate, well, why is that so? And when I did that, I found a whole history about access in California to the water, about a history of segregation, a history of courage and integrating the waves. And I found a whole community of Black surfers in LA, which was amazing. But I wrote the surfing scenes by research, and something told me when I wrote it that it was incomplete. And so I had never surfed before. I can swim. And I decided I had to just do it. And I was like shaking like a leaf at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. I'll just never forget this. I booked myself a surf class with this guy who was on the Greek surf team. Because I was like, if I am close to drowning, at least he can swim. Like, it is Olympically proven that he will possibly save my life. So I booked this lesson, and I went surfing with him. I'm suited up. We did all the things. There's a video actually, which I was gonna. There's a website for the book, and if you have time, check out the video because it's worth watching, and you'll see me go through I filmed everything. I had a good friend come and film this for me. I thought it was going to be meaningful, and it was. But there's a place that you go when you're past the whitewash where you first learn how to kind of get on the board and ride the wave in. So then you learn to paddle out, and you go in this place called the lineup, which is beyond where the waves break. And it's a place of calm, temporary calm, and you're floating, and it's just you in the enormity of the ocean. And it's you're in the ocean's embrace, and it's just you and the water and the wind and the sun, and whatever the weather's going to be at the time, and the birds. And I knew at that moment when I was sitting in that space that there was more that I needed to research, that this wasn't something that you just don't do, that this wasn't the representation that was not available to see myself in this place was because of something. And I couldn't really write this story without answering that question. And so that was why I did it. That was what happened when I did it. And so hopefully that representation and that story, that full story, is reflected in the book.
That's exactly what I was talking about, courage, when I was saying, where do you find the courage to tell these stories? And that was just, I mean, I had already read that part, but then I was looking at the video. I was like, oh, I see. She was out there. And then your surfing teacher kind of looked like,
could be
the character in the book. And I was like, but just kidding, Jeff. So, but it was intense, and I enjoyed that. One of the things that really jumped out at me was the theme of Ramona, getting married, or trying to hide the fact that she wasn't getting married from her mother and her father. I don't want to give away too much, but in The Secret Keeper of Main Street, when I've gone around and I've toured, and I've had to, I was a dressmaker in a bridal salon for many, many, many years. I owned the salon, and I would always tell people that, brides get married for their families, and the men get married for their, joy. Joy. And it was just like that was just right there. And it was like, oh my gosh. So it was just like tugging at my heart the whole time. I felt for her having to hide this situation, because I would just touch these brides' hands, and they're just like, you're doing this for all the wrong reasons. And it was just like, oh, just break my heart. So, and I just like in the, not this book, but the one before this, I was like, did you have a baby? Because you really wrote that story about the baby really, really well. Like everything she writes is just like so real. So, I mean, that's just touched my heart. So,
thank you.
I think I have covered all of my good questions. For writers, and I always want to talk about this because that's just something that everybody has a story in them, and that's something that I believe.
I agree with that.
What kind of advice would you give besides prayer?
Prayer, therapist.
Yeah. Lots of tissue.
Yeah.
But what kind of advice would you give someone just starting out and really just say they already have their story?
Yeah.
It's already written.
Yeah.
And even from that point on, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, so I was just in Chicago for part of my book tour, and I went to a college prep public high school in the south side of Chicago, the same neighborhood that Ramona's family would live in. Like I was looking at the houses, I was like, oh my God, this is where Ramona grew up. But it was predominantly African-American student body. And I spoke to an assembly of juniors and seniors, which was the toughest audience. You guys are kittens compared to that audience. Okay. That was a tough audience. 7th period after lunch, juniors and seniors. I was like, if I can hold this room, I can do anything. I'm like, I've done stand-up comedy and it was easier than that. So I was, and I got this question. So I would give the same answer that I gave to this young woman in that audience. And I said that the first thing you should do is write for yourself a vision of yourself as the writer that you want to be. So that's your vision statement, where you see yourself for yourself as who you're becoming, as what you're doing, as what you're writing. And that's the first thing you write. And everything after that, the story you have in your heart, everything you want to do, is the truth of all of that is going to be that statement that you wrote before anybody told you couldn't, before it looked difficult, before you woke up and it seemed impossible, before you couldn't solve that problem on the page, before your page count is too high or too low, before people rejected you. All of the vision, the purest vision of yourself should be in that vision statement that you write as the first thing. And you hold on to it and you read it as you're writing. You read it as you finish. You read it as you're editing. And that's your North Star, so that nobody can tell you who you are other than you. And that is what I would say about, that's what I do for every project. And it's necessary because writing and publishing is the most self-doubting industry of all possibilities. It's the most challenging. You will confront yourself. You will confront people who don't know you, who will tell you what is not possible for you, even though they don't know you, and expect you to believe them, strangely enough, and think that they're right.
Yeah. And they have a lot of rules.
And there's a lot
of rules in publishing. And that is, now this is it's a little touchy, but, being a Black female writer, I'll just start back when I started 30 years ago, expecting a certain story. You can't tell that story.
Right.
You can only tell this story.
Right.
And not a lot has changed.
Right. Well, yeah.
Not a lot has changed, but that's one of the things I enjoy about your stories, because you do a lot of the things I was told I can't do.
I know. I thankfully, when I first started, I have a pen name because I started writing. I was a lawyer. I was an executive. I didn't think this would be a career. I just wrote Black Girls Must Die Exhausted because I thought people needed it. It was like my community service. Like, I was writing books and I was like, I'm just doing this so that this will be out in the world. This is the piece of myself, because I was so busy with work and I felt so blessed, honestly. Like, my career, my life has been beautiful. It's been amazing. It's been an adventure. And I felt so blessed to be in the spaces that I've been in, to learn what I've learned, to experience what I've experienced. And I would write these books as a way to give back at whatever this capstone of whatever I learned. When I learned about social media with Lady Gaga, I wrote a book about social media. I put it out in the world. When I worked with Prince, I wrote a book about resilience. I put it out in the world, and I just kept it moving. So when I was like, okay, I need to write a book about authenticity, about being, yourself, your truest self, that was when I decided I was going to write Black Girls, because I was like, people are telling us in particular constantly something's wrong with us, something's wrong with my hair, something's wrong with my skin, something's wrong, we're undesired, we're this, we're, and I was like, I want to celebrate who we are in spite of all of this, because I just love being loud. I just love my metallic nails and the ways that we insist upon joy. That was what I was celebrating, and I did not care who bought it. If they didn't, that wasn't how I was paying my bills. So that was what how I was able to break those rules. And thankfully now, I mean, that book became a bestseller independently. And when I went to my publisher, it was a different kind of conversation. But my editor, I do have to get her, my acquiring editor, she acquired the Black Girls series when it was not, that was unusual. And thankfully it went on to do really, really well. But even now, when she supports me. And I think, having an advocate it does make a difference. And particularly as a Black author, because you are doing it the harder way.
Yeah.
And it's just true. And I think for any author, if that's not how you identify, you should be reading Black authors. You should watch what Black authors do, because the space is not hospitable to us. And if we're making it happen,
Mm-hmm.
then there's something to learn there that's valuable for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, if I wasn't Black, I would be like, let me go see what these Black ladies are doing. Because I mean, I would, like, if I woke up tomorrow and I wasn't Black, I'd be like, well, let me find out, because that's where the lessons are. Like,
Yeah.
if in, you know,
it's a pushing a boulder up.
yeah. And if there,
Yeah.
so how, if you're doing this well against all this resistance,
Mhm.
you must know something.
Right.
And I would want to know what that knowing was.
Yes.
So
I mean, yes, I mean, that's exactly how I would always explain it when I would, go out in the world. It just, it's like you have a plane, your plane is flying, but you absolutely have nowhere to land. I mean, look at you, you got a plane, you're flying, but I can't stay up here forever. I gotta land this plane, and somebody's got to buy this book.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the way I always felt. Like I would
Yeah.
just have to find my space. So that's exactly how you explain it very well. I don't know how much time we have left. I just want to say thank you guys for coming out, because it is not easy getting around in California.
Yeah.
not easy at all. Would you like to say something else? Let's close out.
Well, this is a really a dream for me that you're moderating an event for me, and I was able to moderate an event for you. And absolutely, there's so many connections. The Secret Keeper of Main Street is an incredible book, as are all of your books. They've inspired me. And it's nice to have connections. I didn't even actually think about the bridal connection with this book. But I just want to thank everybody for coming and for hearing about this book. This is honestly one of, I love all of my books, but this was the first book I was able to write full-time, with full-time focus. And I just love it. If I didn't write it, I would still love it as much. So I'm excited to share it with you. I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that it brings you everything that I put into it. And thanks for your support, and thanks for coming.
Yeah. And don't forget, I warned you about the romance.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's spicy. It's spicy. It is. I put a little extra paprika or pepper in it.
It was a lot of paprika.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah,
I was like, I wanted it to be
cayenne.
I wanted it to be cayenne. Exactly. I wanted it to be. There's some spice in here. That's That's all I'm saying. My dad's reading it. I'm so embarrassed.
Are you serious?
I know.
That would scare the heck out of me.
Oh, I know. I'm so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God. But you know what? Somebody told me, so the audiobook is really evidently I'm listening to it. I love the audiobook. So I was like, so excited. I was like, Dad, the audiobook's amazing. He's like, how do I get it? I was like, it's not available in English. No, he's listening to the audiobook, and I'm just like, oh God, I don't know. Every time he calls now, I'm like, are we gonna have an uncomfortable conversation? So.
I totally feel that. I do. But I mean, it's just it's like it looks all innocent. But I should find a part and read it. Is there a question? Yes.
This question's for both of you, actually. I'm curious as to how you navigate the commercial success and everything that comes along with that, and sort of balance that with your artistic expression, and maybe not wanting to give the audience that you sort of accumulated over the last few books, maybe give them something different, and maybe the expectation that comes along with that. How do you navigate that?
Do you want to? Well, I'll say this. I just sold 2 more books, and I'm known for I write, I guess, realistic fiction, upmarket commercial fiction, whatever. I like, that's what people know me as a writer of. I just sold a new series that's paranormal romance about shapeshifters with a reimagined history in the American South. And that was what I wanted to do next, because for me, it's about growth. And I think my readers will come along. If I write a great book, then people that read all my other books will read what I wrote next. And for me, this is about growth. I just want to be a great writer. And I think that's the thing about being an artist is like your only job is to be fearless as an artist. So, I'm an author, but I am stepping into my space as an artist. And so, yes, there's I guess you could think about it from the perspective of like commercial appeal. And I'm lucky enough to have a editor and a publisher like Trisha's talking about, because it's a real thing that editors and publishers and agents will be like, you can't sell that, and they'll tell you that and they'll believe it. And so they will act on that belief and not buy the book. Thankfully, I have an editor who believes in me. And if I tell her, this is what I feel most passionate about, this is what I'm writing, she has questions for me, I answer those questions, and she's like, okay, let's do it. And I'm like, are you editing it? She's like, yep, let's go. And she edited this. We had tears over it. We cried. We had tough conversations. My editor is white, and that was helpful. She got uncomfortable. We both were, it was uncomfortable. And I'm like, that's exactly what you need. You need somebody that's willing to get uncomfortable with you and get in the trenches with you and be there with you. And when it's ugly and it's, if you need to be able to get into those ugly spaces and make it beautiful, and get there. So I've been lucky in that respect of having someone who will go with me there. But I'm not afraid. And honestly, if somebody was not going to buy my book, I'll self-publish and I won't think twice about it because I made a ton of money.
It's like
I made a ton of money when I did.
Just to add to that, I wrote a series that had 9 books in the series, just like it went on forever to me. And when I wanted to write historical fiction and leave that genre behind, I could not find an editor, a publisher, an agent, because my agent had passed away. So I couldn't even find, they wanted literally for me to send them another book in the series. And that was the end of the conversation. That was what they wanted. And I wanted to write historical fiction. And they were like, but you don't write historical fiction. But I do.
But I did, right?
So that is how that conversation. As for the audience, they don't come along gently. They really don't. Especially if you change a full genre, like you go from, romance or paranormal, and then you decide to write historical, or you decide, I don't know, horror. I don't know. I don't know all of the different, but they don't come along easy. It's like starting over. You have that, security that they trust you, that you're gonna tell a good story, but it's pulling the horse without the cart. It's just but it's hard. So it is hard and it is risky, but it's no fun doing the same thing over and over again. If you are an artist, you do want to see a different story come about. So you just have to trust that, people will see that it is a good story, and or you just get a whole new set of readers.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yes.
Which will come.
Yeah, sometimes that happens too. And that's what's happened with my story is I did get a whole new set of readers. They're kind of nicer. So.
Well, you deserve all the What Passes Is Love and this. I hope you just continue, or whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do, I'm here for it. I'm reading it. So
thank you so much. Okay, well, I am gonna.
Are there any other questions?
Turn it over to. Question. Oh.
I just read this quote yesterday, and Instagram, there's always these little memes that go by. And one of them was, writing a book is just like reading a book, except the book hates you. So I'm wondering how you, especially given your transition to different kinds of books, and I imagine that might bring some different kinds of challenges or writer's block, just wondering how you deal with that. And then I would also love to know some of your favorite authors in this more like modern romance
space?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is writing a book is like I thought that was funny. I'm like, I had to process that. I'm like, do I feel that way? I don't exactly feel that way because I am very process oriented. So I think I might have engineered my way out of writer's block in the sense that I'm a plotter. I like to write from an outline, and I think the engineer part of my brain sets up the structure for the artist part to like kind of just flow, and I have a train track to go along with the outline. Um, so that is my structure. I think about the reader and like where am I taking them. I kind of know the emotional points, the highs, where are we going, and I just look at it. My brain works like that, and I kind of architect the story on that basis. So I think it's different for everybody, but I would recommend for any new writer or somebody who hasn't published yet to have an outline, just because the biggest danger is not finishing your book. And then the other piece to that for me is that editing is 85% of the writing process. And so you've never seen a writer's first draft, I don't think, or a published book. Like all the books on the shelf, you have no idea what that first draft looks like. And it's ugly. And so that's where, yes, that draft hates you. That draft, like it hates everybody. It's a miserable soul. But the job and the beauty of this, the art, the crafting is to move it from that wretched thing of a first draft to this beautiful work of art that it reflects so many decisions and choices and adjustments, and it's like conducting a symphony in a sense, of how you bring it all together, but you've done it over successive reads of the manuscript and different problem solving opportunities over however long you have to edit, because if your deadline you may have to dial it in, but so that's what I would say. Hopefully that answers that part of the question. And then the our authors that I like in the contemporary space, Trisha R. Thomas is
past contemporary.
Well,
space.
yes, but but I would probably speak to authors that have published previously. The contemporary space for me right now, I don't feel like is extraordinarily courageous in a lot of, and there might be some books that I haven't come across because I have not had a chance to read as much as I would like to, given my like back-to-back yearly deadlines. So what I read that I wish I had more time to dive in, and I probably am not going to give a good answer for this amongst what is going on and what I see publicly. I know Kennedy Ryan's an amazing writer, and Tia Williams, of course. So those I look to, like I said, I look to Black women authors in the contemporary space because there's inherent courage in just being there. And so I think those would be names that I would mention. And then I wish I had lesser known names, because I do think that right now romance is entering, we've got this kind of like romantic-y romance space that's not, that I want to see the envelope pushed a little bit more on a human level. Like I think we're, in this like kind of romance space that is, isn't teaching us anything, isn't making us uncomfortable. And I'd like to see more stories that make us a little bit uncomfortable. So that's what I'd be looking for. And I will, on social or something, when I get some time, I will charge myself with highlighting those stories. So that's where I am.
Yeah. I don't have nothing to add. I wish I did.
Oh, you had.
Yeah, I also have two questions. The first is I've heard you make this distinction between author and artist.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, but it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you've sort of gone from from author and evolved to artist.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, what is the bridge that has made that happen, or what transformation has taken place? And secondly, I think you're unusual among authors because you have been a lawyer, you have been a CEO, you have a really wide range of experience.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, I want to say this in the positive way. If you could wave a magic wand and make one change in publishing,
Mhm.
what would that be? The
Oh,
not so
interesting.
nice way would be to say, what do you think is the
Issue?
most salient structural problem? Because
Mhm.
it sounds like there's a number of layers of structural problems. Oh, let's keep it in the positive.
Okay. Well, I'll start. This is all kind of similar in the sense that what I realize about being an artist as opposed to an author is that you do have skin in the game as an artist, and you do run risks of personal development challenges, um, of the audience coming along with you or not coming along with you, and then you have to decide what you put out is what it's supposed to be. And I have been learning along the way about being an artist, and it started with Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, and having that title. I was petrified of having a title called Black Girls Must Die Exhausted on every level. I mean, at that time, people didn't even want to let you know that there were Black characters in the book. So I and it was just so in your face, and it was just and it was so intense, and so, but that was the title that inspired. That was the truth. That was what it was, and I didn't realize it was a lightning rod. And so when I first put it out online, I was attacked by Black women. And you could Google this. There's when I was in a message board, and it was just like this raw anger. There was somebody who's like, I run a very influential recommendation list, and you will never be featured by me. And this is lazy. And so I'll never forget this. And I just I'm out of here. This is a mess. But I wasn't going to change what I was doing, because that was the point. The point was to do the thing and to tell the truth, or to put that out as I saw it. I mean, every mission is not my mission. This was my assignment. So I did my assignment for that. And it's scary. There were nights I've cried so many times I don't remember how many times. I've been frustrated so many times I don't remember what I was frustrated about. It's just that just feeling like you're banging your head against the wall. But you don't stop, and I think moving from that to the idea of being an artist is now the question becomes, what do I want to do? What am I attempting? What do I want to try to create, and not thinking about anything other than that. And that was where that was the difference. I think that's what Prince was talking about when he was just saying not to be afraid. And I think that's you're as an artist, that's your job, to just go where other people won't go, even if it's inside yourself. Mm-hmm. And so that I hold the space. I'll get uncomfortable. You don't have to be as courageous as me, or you don't have to get on the surfboard. I put it in the book for you. I went and found what was there. It's my lens on that, but I went and did it. And that's what I think is the beauty of an artist, is the audacity. That's the other piece that is part of the art.
That's one of the things I was talking about when I said, where do you find the courage? Because I didn't know about the attacks. It's like, forgive me for being in my bubble. But
no, I mean, you wouldn't if you. I hope nobody sees it because
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was I'm like, wow.
I had no idea, but I did know it was a strong title. And I
Yeah.
was like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. And Happily Ever After was one of those titles. And
Mhm.
I got a lot of heat. And that is one of the things about being a Black author, as well as you have to make everybody happy.
Mhm.
And you do. I mean, you still have to sell. At the end of the day, you have to land the plane.
Mhm.
And so you have to find your space.
Mhm.
And so you can be an artist, but you also have to, form something that everyone, or not
You have to
everyone,
make a commercial product.
you have to make a product that someone is going to buy. And then you have to make sure that you're not hurting anyone in your process of art. You absolutely cannot do any harm.
Yeah.
You cannot do any harm. And that does limit you. I mean, not that I want to go out, but you want to tell your truth. And sometimes some things are going to be hurtful.
Yeah.
Because truth does hurt.
That's true.
Sometimes. And
Truth
so
does hurt.
it really was a bold title, that first title.
Yeah. I had no experience with doing art. So I was not prepared. But I mean, now I am, and I have the space for that. So I think that's, and the waving the magic wand, what would I change? I mean, I'm on the diversity committee of the Authors Guild. I think that for publishing, the opportunity for all of us is to diversify what's offered and to court a wider audience, and I think that publishing right now has put themselves in a position where it's assumption of this existing audience and completely ignoring the power of books to reach beyond the borders of where we've been.
And it's always been like that.
Yeah.
They've always found the niche or the place that you must belong and that you must appeal before you can reach out to others.
Yeah. So that would be the thing. If I could wave a wand, I would shift the focus to expanding the readership and away from trying to create books that meet what is perceived as the existing demand.
That's deep. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
It's like a manifesto. We need that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, again, for coming. We have books up here to purchase. You guys perched up here for signing. But yeah, great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.